Thanks, Varna and the Design United team, Clayworks, etc., for inviting us to be part of this wonderful series that you guys have initiated. Lots of really, um, practices that we weren't aware of, both artistic as well as architectural. And it was also wonderful to see how younger younger architects have been part of these conversations, which I think is really amazing. So congratulations on your efforts. It's really intimidating to be doing this along with Madhu, whose work um, in a way sort of is reaching something that we aspire to, in the sense of this kind of a deep structure. I mean, all of the things that he spoke about, this idea of going beyond program, and really it's what Khan spoke about when he spoke about form. This idea of the nature of things, that you ask, like he did in the Trenton bathhouse, or in the Dominican mother house, what is the nature of this space? And that wonderful project in Seoul, I mean in Suncheon, where I'm sure that the courtyard wasn't part of the program, but then that becomes the heart of this project, place to meet, a place for communion. So yeah, intimidating, but also inspiring to be considered in the same company. So both Suni and I are very happy to be here. um, yeah so I'll just go through very quickly because I think we're kind of running behind. I'm going to skip that. I've also sort of taken a similar stab at this, like Madhu has. Rather than going through a bunch of projects, I've just sort of tried to assimilate. And of course, I've been doing a few of these lectures over the course of this lockdown and pandemic. So forgive me. I think many of you have seen all of these slides before. So please bear with me as I go through the same set of things again. But they are recurring themes in a lot of our works: meaning and memory, precedence and illusion, deep structure, context. And in context, I want to also reinforce what Madhu has just said, and the idea of scenius, or community, a sort of scene producing the work. And in meaning and memory, of course, meaning, the first one, of course, is about the senses and about how images, the treachery of images, this wonderful painting by Magritte, where, we're constantly being deceived to believe that what we see is reality, when in fact we need an embodied experience of what is around us to really appreciate what it means. And so architecture too, unfortunately has now flattened out onto our screens, into our magazines, and that becomes the sense of architecture. And I think we more and more are realizing that this kind of an embodied experience is an ambition to be had in our times, in our strange times. And also the fact that meaning and memory are not sort of an abstract, that there is no rule that says that this is the way stone is to be used, or this is the way a school is to be designed, exactly like Madhu said, that we bring to bear as creative individuals, as critical practitioners, a way to read our situations, our particular situations. In Magritte's Key of Dreams, in fact, we are that key, that we look at the horse and we remember our childhood, and we remember the horse park and the kulfi ice cream, and then that's the associative memory that then makes meaning for us in the world. And so even for young architects or young students to realize that really the work of architecture, the work of a critical practitioner, is to bring to bear your own understanding and your own baggage and your own prejudices into the work, and it becomes more meaningful because of that. Meaning and memory, Aalto doing exactly that in this wonderful wall in Finland, where he's remembering his vacations in Italy in the cold of winter, and looking out into that blue window and into the Mediterranean sky, thinking of a much better time when it's 2 degrees Celsius. So Alto remembering and registering his fondness for Italy as the source of, both warmth, but also of inspiration. And in our work, especially the residential work, which we don't do much of, Suni does a lot of them. Really, these homes are not a reflection of us; they're a reflection of the people we work with, our clients, and their memories and their sort of hopes and desires. And so, this house that we did for Sanjay and Jaya, which is really about that garden and about communion and about their parties and their memory of the house that they lived in. And so it captures that essential connection which was so important to them as a family, coming as the source of this building. Also with Hima and Siddharth's house, this idea of a cottage in the hills, or the notion of a very crafted interior, something that Hima was really keen on, but reflecting also their very, very fine taste and sense of you know of quality. This wonderful house, a house for 1,001 nights, as we call it, a house for parties, what the Shodhan house wanted to be, where Gautam and Vinuta, they have this house where it's basically a series of places where you can host events and friends. And so terraces up on the 13th and 14th floor, surveying the city and enjoying the company of friends. Also meaning coming as a direct reflection of what the project requires functionally. And so though program is essential here, the acoustic conditions of these rooms offering us the guide by which this space has been designed, this sort of articulated form coming as a response to the actual functional requirements within. So rather than a capricious or arbitrary nature, that it comes from a real understanding of what the place is going to be used for. We're also interested in Precedence and Illusion, and this amazing drawing by Piera della Francesca, which collapses into one frame, two scenes across time. So on the left-hand side, you see Pontius Pilate looking on the flagellation of Christ. Christ is sort of tied up onto that pole and people are whipping him. But across the centuries, there's the Duke of Urbino on the right-hand side, who was also killed by these two conspirators, on either side of him. And by making that painting with these two characters, the artist is making a connection and giving credence to the Duke of Urbino as a Christ-like figure who is now needs redemption and is the sort of, the sort of symbol of justice and freedom, like Christ was, and was sort of, taken down much too early. But by collapsing these references, one is drawing meaning from these references. And so we too, through our wonderful teachers who we've had, the mentors that we've had, we stand on the shoulders of these giants in making our work and trying to find meaning in our work, that through their lessons, through their example, that we then give credence to what we want to do. And so for us, this reaching across time, to look back and to draw from the past inspiration to give meaning and credence for our work. And so apart from our teachers, of course, the world around us offers us that opportunity of sort of gleaning information, gleaning inspiration. So trips like this where you draw by hand, you try to register, and all of these an essential activity to try and abstract and to try and assimilate and make your own these fundamental principles, much like Madhu's wonderful work, which sort of seems to have already reached that level of clarity. And so to talk about this standing on giants, of course, we're constantly aware of what has gone beyond, before us. And like T.S. Eliot says, we're thinking about practicing both in a recognition of the pastness of things, of what has come before us, but also of its contemporaneity. So what was past, what was history, and what its presence is today, and how we operate today with the understanding of that pastness. So wonderful ideas like the idea of the mat building, where it's about democracy and freedom, but also about order and rhythm. The idea of participatory space as the essential condition of an institution where everything is about what is in between. Like that, again, like that wonderful courtyard in Madhu's project, where that's the heart of the project, that this participatory space invites you to both look and partake of community, but also to engage with your friends in intimate communion. So that's the essential condition of an institution. Form and design, Kahn's wonderful, dichotomous design process. On the one hand, form as an abstract question of what is the nature of things. And there was a wonderful lecture recently by Jaimini Mehta who talked about the Trenton bathhouse in New Jersey. And the idea that Kahn understood at the heart of this project was the idea of community, about people meeting as they come to take a dip in the pool, that it was a communal activity. And so the void, the sort of open center becomes the heart of this building, and not the shower cubicles, the toilets, the washing, the wash basins, but it's really the nothingness the place where you would now speak to your friends, hang out while you're changing, and discuss the politics of the time. So form being the marriage of both, form and design being the marriage both of the nature of things, the fundamental question of what this project is about, but also design as a reflection of circumstance and contingency. That Khan, and I'll show you later a project where he's marrying these two. And so I'm interested in Madhu's work, but I'm also wondering about how Madhu talks to, or how he incorporates and deals with contingency and as an essential author of the work. Deep structure is Charles Corrier's wonderful term for this kind of depth charge that you get when you go to a place that you somehow recognize fundamentally that it's something ancient, but also something that you completely connect to. I think of IIM Bangalore as a place like that, that you go to and immediately have a sense of recognition as if you knew this place all along. And it's some sort of a history that's been sort of brought down to you from all of our histories. The idea of going down to get water, the idea of piling up to reach the sky, that these are essential sort of endeavors that bring you back the history of all of us. And the idea of and the notion of the beautiful idea, that's a wonderful sketch by Utzon, and that lovely building in Sydney, which captures both the essential nature of the geology, the geography of that particular location, these headlands that go into the harbor, and this building as an extension of one of those headlands with the clouds hovering over. And how can we come to a metaphor for that site, for that particular location as the guiding principle for our project? And so these are ideas, of course, from the giants who we look up to, from Alison Smithson to Hertzberger to Kahn to Corrier, and of course to Utzon. The third condition is the idea of deep structure and recognition. Just to go on what Corrier was talking about, this is a wonderful project by Shilpa Gupta at the Kochi Biennale last year, or 2 years ago, and this room where 101 or 100 jailed poets, their poetry was pinned onto these spikes in this room, and these microphones hanging from the roof, which weren't microphones really, they were speakers. And as you passed by these speakers, you would hear whispered out of them these poems sort of read out in defiance of the censoring of these words. And so at once you are complicit in that engagement with this reactionary poetry, but you're also transported to another place and another time in a room with friends talking about the things that really concern you. So it's a sort of transportative sort of experience in Shilpa Gupta's project. And of course, all of you have seen this project, which I keep talking about because it really was a profound experience for me and remains to be the most incredible experience, going to Akbar's tomb in Sikandra, going through these magnificent gates, one after the other, all sort of gateways to heaven, and finally down a dark corridor where there's almost no light, no sensory stimuli at all, and so you're called upon to think of all of the other senses of memory and ego, and you're called upon to think of this communion with Akbar at a metaphysical level. And in that dark chamber, something sort of changes, the whole energy is different. How can architecture do that again, to take you beyond what is the physical realm? Context, and this is where, what Madhu said, and to reiterate what Madhu said, context is both these things. And these are two paintings by Patwardhan from Bombay, a radiologist with a very, very sharp eye. And the left-hand side is the city for Patwardhan. And each of these people, the guy in the bus, the guy in the white shirt looking at the bus, the person drinking his tea, the people on the mezzanine, they're all in their little worlds, just like, Kabiru, who will come later. They're all sort of in their own trajectories, finding their own meaning. And in a sense, that's form, like Khan would say, that each of us is trying to bring to bear, like in Magritte's painting, our own understanding of the world. And that's context too. But context is also the physical condition of a place. And that wonderful painting of the Irani restaurant, where the Irani restaurant owner has become part of the furniture, also made out of marble, sitting there waiting for the emergency to pass. And there in the mirror are the life of the city that he misses. This is painted just after the emergency, but he's part of that context, completely embedded in it. And this is a project by Caesar, which really captures for me not because of only Caesar's project, but because it tells us also about the other building next to it, that the church, where we're talking about the truth, about the meaning, all of it embedded within the church. You come into the church and then, you realize what the real meaning of the world is. And so the church doesn't look at the ocean. It flattens out the landscape. It's completely devoid of any windows. It's mostly about walls, etc. And so it turns its face away from what is the most spectacular view out onto the Atlantic Ocean. But that's the nature of the building, that the real meaning of this facility is within it, whereas Caesar's wonderful building, which he made when he was 24 years old, looks out onto the ocean, a secular place for communion, really enjoying. But both these buildings valid in the way that they respond to context because of their fundamental nature. And the last thing is about seniors, the idea that it's really, we've gone past the notion of genius, the single solitary mastermind who makes the great masterpiece, to really the scene making the masterpiece, and all of us together wearing our own glasses, looking at the world differently and making meaning out of our work. And architecture is that kind of communal activity. And so as seniors, of course, we have wonderful collaborators. Varna and Design United have had Harshit sitting in the blue shirt on the left-hand side. Harshit is now, has a practice of his own. Orko, who did Ira in the striped shirt, Surabhi in blue, next to her, Anna, Srikanth, Harriet on the left. These are all wonderful collaborators who we've been lucky to have in the office, who brought a lot of who contributed significantly to our work. And without the team, the work is less. And of course, Suni, my wife, who we started this practice with. But also, this is a picture from NASA in 1994. There's Suni and me. We won the GSEN trophy. And so, NASA is really important because you never know what the benefits are of doing group work, but also that BMS was that kind of place, a place of incredible communion of people together, learning from their peers. And really that set the scene for us in understanding that it wasn't really us driving the process of things, that it was really in coming together that there was more energy and more coherence in what we were doing. Vimal Jain, who's on the right-hand side, was an integral part of this group at BMS in the 90s. He passed away in 2014. We made a foundation in his name, and in 2014 we had a wonderful event with Jyotindra Jain and Charles Courier at the Indian Institute of Science. For once, all of us were thanking Bangalore for the terrible traffic, because we got all of this time with Courier speaking about all kinds of things, an incredibly inquisitive, curious mind with a great cutting sense of humor. We announced a workshop. Everybody thought Charles Courier was doing the workshop, but he wasn't. So our tutors came to the workshop with Charles Courier masks, which Shomitra made. But it was Prashant Pol, Vijay Narnapati, Nagaraj Vastare, and Shomitra Ghosh who conducted the workshop as part of this first event. We've since had 2 workshops, at IIM Bangalore, residential workshops modeled on the Mercat Masterclass, where we've had Richard Patrier and Peter Stutchberry with Doshi the first time, and with Prema Tilake and Neil McLaughlin the second time. We've also hosted, of course, after having seen Madhu's incredible work in Hyderabad, we managed to get it to Bangalore and hosted it at BIC, a wonderful exhibition. We had a panel discussion, but the exhibition was a real sort of eye-opener for students, his amazing models and clear drawings. And very recently in 2019, we hosted an evening with Doshi where we showed some clips of a picture of a film that my brother made with me, but we also invited 4 local architects to talk about the influence that Doshi's had, a wonderfully sort of moving and personal tribute to the great master. So very quickly, BIC, 7 years, 18 iterations, 27 project architects, 11 consultants, 17 contractors, 8 principal donors, and for a piddling building of 45,000 square feet. So a long gestation for this project, which in some sense, really opened our eyes in the sense of this idea of shared authorship. So what is the nature of a public building? How do you organize a mixed use program? And how do you critically respond to a particular condition that you're presented with? And in this case, of course, there is the context, but also the nature of designing by committee. And so what is a public building? And we always look back at this wonderful project that Moneo did in Murcia in the south of Spain, And it's a project that, of course, the building on the right is Muneo's building, which sits on that plaza, but it basically creates, just like the church did in the old days, it creates these places, and those things that you see on either side of the main door, they're called retables, and those retables are filled with the patrons, the angels, the sort of the divinities that look down onto this plaza and sort of give you sanction to use it. And now Muneo subverts that notion of the retable, but now sort of with people, all of us having access in this city hall, looking down onto this plaza and giving it sanction and having hegemony over public space. So the notion of gaze, the notion of power through observation, the notion of being at a place of vantage as an essential notion of what it is to be public. Also the idea of committee, and so this wonderful example of Kahn's building in Medea in Pennsylvania. He did this Dominican Mother House project. He started with that plan on the left-hand side, and you can see that over the course of 2 years, Kahn is slowly sort of negotiating, of course, very, very tough situations with regards to the budget of the project. He's at $5 million on the left, and as he comes to the fourth iteration on the right-hand side, it's down to 1.5 million square feet. $1.5 million. And what the drawing actually tells you is that Kahn assimilates into the scheme the fundamental nature of the Dominican order. That there is no distinction, like in the first scheme, between the private, the spiritual, and the public, the sort of public or the communal work or the community work that the sisters did. And so as a plan, it collapses into one sort of gestalt, both the private as well as the public components of the plan, and captures in essence what the Dominican order is about. And that comes not as a master architect sort of thinking about it in isolation, but through these conversations with the client. And so the BIC is very similar. We started with this very dramatic scheme with a public plaza on the second floor. We had changes on the site, and these are the iterations of the plan. We had 18 of them. These are some of those iterations, starting with the centrally organized plan, moving to the right to the plan that's on the absolute right, which tells you how we've sort of moved the circulation and now finding a lot of public space within the building that then is the heart of the BIC. So there's diagrams which explain that, the section which tells you what the competition scheme was like, and now this, the building that we've designed, as a much richer notion of community and engagement as a result of that section. Varna worked with us on this, and so the building is completely sort of overtaken with this amazing landscape, which softens the sort of hard edges of the architecture and gives you incredible sort of vantages from within. So there's the sort of main driveway, the brick enclosure inside, the gardens from within this sort of communal space, shared space, and the terraces. I'm going to run real quick through this. And various kinds of places for, so really the heart of the building not being so much the sort of program, but all of this in-between space that BIC has really appropriated over the past year to create all kinds of events and exhibitions and storytelling, etc.
See, India has always survived and celebrated via frugalness and very intelligent way of using everything to the best things. For example, this dhoti is completely half naked, no? But it is a clothing but which has a great style, and it gives you all the air and whatnot. Look at Indian clothing, how comfortable it is, more comfortable than even the Japanese, because it works with climate, etc. Now look at the turban and a dhoti, and you go to the well and you can take out that long thing and you can take a little pot and go down and bring the water, or you spread it at night, or you cover yourself. How many ways you can use it? And I think this is Indianness. Indianness is ingeniously find several ways of using the same thing very efficiently. The lota which Charles James talked so much about, I think these are all Indian. Now, that is Indian mind. Indian mind is ingenious. Indian mind says, if I can do this, can I do something else? That's where we get confused also. But they will always say 1 plus, not just 1. In everything, look at the mathematics, look at language, look at everything else. There's always something added. Now that something added is that extra joy. And I think that is where the ingenuity is seen. Music, you look at it. Why, it should be compared with jazz only, and why not like this? How is it that it's time bound? But in time bound, each gharana can sing differently. Same notes, but you can play differently. Theatre, that whole theatre with Ram Leela, you are going in a cross like this, in 4 places, you find a king here and a ordinary fellow here and a ministers here and public here, and you go in time and space over a long time. You can do it in 20 minutes, you can do it in 2 months. How come? And you are formally separate, but informally you are close by. It's not centric. The Greek theatre is centric, focused. Indian plan is not centric. The whole idea is, if it is a sustainable building, it should use everything which is available from almost west. And all this is done by the local people. This is all done. I told them, just do what you like. I gave them pieces, so they wanted, this is Amitabh Bachchan for them. So this is where you enter. Very small, inconspicuous entrance, not a royal entrance, no portico, nothing, a little courtyard. It's like a domestic entrance. And the entrance here is even like that, it's very simple. I was thinking, why should an office be like an office? Why should I not only have an office only for myself but close at 5? Why can't it become a public space? So you're talking about public and private, form versus formlessness, growth and other things, and yet it has to be a studio. And then you talk about partly above, partly below ground. All this happened. I think now you can shoot my granddaughter. Let us see my darling daughter. I had made this building by chance, the extension. That building happened because I had to make this into non-agricultural land. And so I had to find something. Yeah. So the neighbor had only curved sheets. So I said, overnight, let me make the curved sheets and make a plan. So I made a plan and I made the roof and I got my stamp. But then I said, my God, how nice this is. So always there are clues. we must be aware to use them. So you can get the sense of all these spaces. And these buildings insert into this, as if that this building is going in. It moves like this. And this is, you can see the old sample, and it's north-south. And then I get a very big garden here. Again, this is against Vastu. This is west, and this is south. So one Vastu chap came here and he saw this. He says, "Are you going to have some trouble?" I said, "No." He says, "You never had any problem?" I said, "No. In fact, I have been successful." After a month, he comes back and says, "You are right. This is where Dhirubhai Ambani's entrance is. This is Vastu." I said, "Why don't I make a village?" And that's what I like, a tree, a garden, the steps. And that's how it began to happen. And then one day I made those arches and then became everything. And again, it has all the West products. It has China mosaic, which was never used before. It has Gaudi, it has Rai, everything is there. It is like a good food that you enjoy, which is done by the best chefs, but you are the one who is digesting this, and you have to convert that into your blood and your life. And what I do is only follow this biological order. Borrow everything and finally become yourself. And that Gandhiji's idea that, look, open the windows but see that your roof is not blown out. Your foundations have to be strong. So you have to be deep inside an Indian who is frugal, who can invent, who can take a chance, and who can starve. There is a student here from Stuttgart, who is working here, and I was talking her about Indianness, and she mentioned something very interesting. She says, Indianness is in riding in the bus or in the train. In the train, there are no windows which are closed. You are in a journey and the air is flowing all the time, everywhere, and you are partly inside and partly outside. I think that is India. And not only but this way, physically, philosophically also. We are very ambiguous, more or less. I may come, I may not come.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.